it's your art teacher, Mr. Guerra, and today we are going to be delving into some delightful deliciousness with this creative cup of cocoa. Inspired by contemporary folk artist Heather Galler and her amazing artwork. And paired with this chocolatey concoction is Buzu Trading Card number 38, Beanjamin Brewster. Now don't let the mugshot fool you. Beanjamin Brewster might be grumpy, but he is the undisputed champion of cocoa crafting in the entire Buzuverse. Known for his piping hot temper and perfectly brewed game strategy, this Buzu bean never misses a match or a marshmallow. With a win-loss record as rich as his recipes, Beanjamin's battles are always steaming with suspense. And his classifications are identity, because he's the Buzuverse's top cocoa technician, and food, because, you know, the cocoa. For this project, you will need a mess mat or something to protect your surface with, a sheet of paper. I'm going to use multimedia paper, a pencil, oil pastels, glue, shaving cream, and a bowl. A plastic spoon or a popsicle stick, a wide unused paintbrush. You can find a link for all of these art supplies in the description below. First, let's start with a mess mat. I'm going to be using newspaper to protect my table surface, and the multimedia paper. It's going to be portrait, so longest sides on the right and left. And I want to start by drawing an oval. One of the best ways that you can kind of control your shapes and your composition is by placing dots. 2 dots gives me about the width that I want for the top, the opening of my coffee mug. And you can see that I'm going to use these really light sketches, not pushing down hard at all. Once I've got my oval, I'm going to draw 2 vertical lines for the sides of my mug. Again, I'm going to be lightly sketching. That way, if I make a mistake, it's easy to erase and I don't see any of the mistake even after I've erased. A curved smiley face line along the bottom of the mug to complete the cylinder shape. And now, 2 backwards letter C's, one bigger and one smaller, to make the handle for this mug. Okay. Now, this is the part where I like to kind of clean up my construction lines. You see that oval doesn't quite reach the side of the mug, which is something that I wouldn't have been able to see until now. So I'm just going to go ahead and do a little bit of cleanup work, employing my eraser, just giving it a little bit of correcting, just a little bit of adjusting. Okay, so now we're going to do a frowny face line, like an arch inside the opening of the mug, for the surface of the cocoa. And you might notice that when we put our marshmallows in, we're going to be doing some of the same stuff we just did. After all, marshmallows are the same basic form as the mug itself, which is a cylinder. So I'm going to be putting these mini cylinders by first drawing ovals, the sides, those little tiny vertical lines, and then closing those off with a smiley face. Now let's go ahead and place a zigzag line on the inside of our mug, because after all, Heather Galler did indeed love these kinds of patterns. So we're going to go ahead and place these zigzag lines in. And you might notice that the sketching aspect of this is going into fast forward motion. So if you need to slow the video down, don't forget that you can always pause the video, do what you need to do, make that creative art, and then continue to play the video once you're ready. I love the pattern of sneaking in triangles that point down on the top and point up along the bottom, and sneaking them into those negative spaces in between that zigzag line, which is pretty awesome. I'm also going to draw a quick smiley face line to make the lip, the lid, as well as down below for the base, and some curved lines inside of my mug just for a little bit of a cool extra patterned detail. Now, if you really want to make the mug look great, especially the pattern that's on the mug, I highly suggest, as an advanced artist's tip, that you align the mug with two smiley face lines. So you can see that I'm imagining this curved line on the top and the bottom of this center pattern detail of zigzags and triangles. And what I want to do here is I want to make sure that the lines of these shapes line up with an imagined curve going along the top and imagined curve smiley face style along the bottom. Now when these curve, if you make the patterns kind of lock up and match, it's going to look a lot more naturalistic, a lot more realistic. The final piece of this detailed pattern is going to be these circles that I'm just going to put in for some extra detail, fill in that empty space, and I'm going to squeeze that into the spaces along the top and the bottom. Now it's time to draw in the horizon line. It's a side-to-side line that starts at the edge of the paper, meets the mug, continues on the other side of the mug, and hits the other side of the paper. Now it's time to make a checkerboard pattern. Now we're not going to worry about perspective this time around, even though perspective would make it look more interesting. But that, my friends, is an entirely different art lesson. Instead, what I'd like you to do is I'd like you to draw 3 to 4 vertical lines that go from your horizon line, the top of your surface, down to the bottom of the paper, and then 2 long horizontal lines that go from side to side and crisscross to give you that checkerboard pattern that we're looking for. All right. One last sketchy detail, and that is going to be the steam, because this is a hot mug of cocoa. So we've got to draw these steam lines. I'm going to put in 5 steam lines that are all contoured with one another. That means they all kind of follow the same flow and give that effect of this hot steam rising off the hot cocoa. Now, once you've gotten this far, give your hands a little bit of rest, stretch them out, because you've completed the sketching process. Great job. Did you know that way back in the days of the Aztecs, chocolate wasn't just a treat, it was money? Yeah, that's right. Cocoa beans were so valuable, people used them to buy stuff like food, clothes, and even pets. So next time someone says money doesn't grow on trees, ask them about the cacao pod, where cocoa beans are from. Beanjamin Brewster's first special ability is called Choco Cover, an epic tornado of chocolate that swirls into a shield so strong it could stop a candy comet. It is now time to color our sketch. Now this mug should get a little bit of texture to give it that Heather Galler style, so we're going to be using oil pastels. At this time, I also want you to get out that wide brand new brush. We're going to use it to kind of sweep away all of the little shavings, the little bits and pieces that are going to be left after we do this amazing coloring job with these oil pastels. Notice the grip with which I'm holding the oil pastels. It's an overhand grip where I keep it pinched between my index finger and my thumb. This allows me to apply the proper amount of firm pressure that it's going to take to really get the vivid, vibrant colors out of my oil pastels. Now, as you can see, I'm using gray and I'm shading it toward the horizon line with a bit of blue with some awesome oil pastel overlapping. But this by no means is me telling you what colors to use. Whether you're using crayons, oil pastels, colored pencils, whatever you have that you're choosing to use for this project, I definitely want you to choose your own color palette. I want you to select those colors that you think would look best. Okay, now if you are using oil pastels, the reason for this brush is because if you choose your hand to kind of swipe away these little shavings, these little bits of oil pastel, it might get onto your hand. And I don't know about you, but for me, sometimes I use my hands on the paper, and I don't want any smudges or any markings that I didn't intend for. So using this brand new brush to just sweep stuff away is best. Now, when it comes to coloring in that steam that's rising off my mug, I start by outlining my pencil lines, and then I'm on purpose looking with my artist's eyes for those spots in the steam where I think there might be shadow. And I'm going to use a darker tan, a darker brown in those shadowy spots, and I'm going to leave the rest of those spots alone to really indicate that there's a wave of puffy smoke going through the steam. And now it's time for what I consider to be the MVP, the most valuable pastel of the bunch, and that's the white. Now, unless I'm using a colored paper, I'm probably not using the white pastel unless it's for the very important job of blending colors together. And I challenge you to try this in your own artworks. If you're using a white oil pastel, use it to bridge the difference between two different color choices just to see what happens. It's a great way to learn. It's a great way to have fun experimenting with oil pastels and improve your skill level while you're using them, as well as your confidence. As you can see in this next section with my blues, I'm leaving parts of my mug, which I think the light might be hitting, completely uncolored. I'm not even going to cover it with the blue oil pastel, but instead I'm going to, as you will see in just a moment, use the white oil pastel to blend those colors in, but not before I've tackled this rich, dark brown, chocolatey deliciousness, making sure not to color on top of any of my marshmallows. Orange is my accent color of choice to make sure that the grays and the blues and the dark blues don't get too dreary. I want to punch it up with some color, make it more interesting to look at. Now I'm going to go in with the gray again, just along the outsides where the mug is white. And look, I'm using that white oil pastel, my MVP, to just really kind of get those little bits of shine into my artwork. All right, it's time for me to tackle my surface. I'm going to be using this tan and a darker brown as a checkerboard pattern. For this part, I want you to go slow and intentional. Whether it's every other color or you're viewing the pattern as a diagonal pattern, take your time to do a good job. And if you mess up, no big deal. Nobody expects anyone to be perfect. You could even cover any mistakes with black. Remember, Heather Galler herself uses very thick black bold outlines. And speaking of black, I want you to make the decision to either outline using a black oil pastel all of your mug details as well as in between the patterns that you've applied, or you can just leave it as is. Either way, your mug is going to look outstanding. All right. So this marvelous masterpiece that we've been working on is heavily inspired by the amazing folk artist, Heather Galler. Heather is a self-taught American folk artist celebrated for her vibrant, patterned, and joyful artworks that span painting, ceramics, jewelry, and more. Born on June 22nd, 1970 in Rochester, New York, Galler has been creating art for over 2 decades. She currently resides and works in Austin, Texas. Galler's work is characterized by bold, black outlines, bright colors, and intricate pattern. And speaking of bold colors, after closing time, did you know Beanjamin Brewster remains in his shop creating colorful marshmallows that explode with a sugary, delicious surprise? And of course, that coats everything with fluff. This would be his second special ability, Marshmelt Magic. Okay, now back to Heather Galler. She has cited Mexican, Italian, and French cultures as significant influences on her art. Over the years, Galler has sold over 750 paintings. Her art has been featured on platforms such as Comedy Central, USA Network, and the TV show Haunted Hathaways. All right, it's time to get out a bowl that you don't mind getting dirty and some glue. Twist the cap and dump some glue into that bowl. Now, the amount that I'm using is somewhere between, I'd say, 4 to 6 ounces. But what's more important than the amount of glue that you're going to use is the shaving cream should be about the same amount. And it's incredibly difficult to figure out what the same amount is. So just know that I didn't really measure this strictly. I mixed them up really, really well until it was one smooth consistency, and it worked out just fine for me. So I don't want you to sweat it too much. Now, this is the part where I know some of you out there may be like, wait a minute, where are you going to put this? What? Mr. Guerra, on top of the cocoa and the marshmallows and even a little bit on top of that steam that we worked so hard to shade? Well, for this part, I'm going to say that This is optional, but if you do have access to shaving cream and glue, I'm going to highly recommend this part and just skip the marshmallows. Even if you do cover them up, somebody might see them in there. Now, what's really great about the shaving cream concoction that we've made is that when this glue and shaving cream combination dry, they take on this foamy texture, almost like styrofoam, and it stays put and it's really fuzzy and it looks so awesome. So give it a try if you can. What is it that makes this so tasty? I mean, it's mostly air. 50% of its volume is just tiny air bubbles. That's why it's so light and fluffy and fun to eat. It's kind of like dessert foam. I mean, seriously, it looks like snow milk or milk snow. And actually, that's exactly what they called whipped cream back in the 1600s because of its fluffy, snowy look. And guess what? They whipped it by hand for up to an hour. And that's why Beanjamin Brewster's third special ability is called Whip Whirl, a steaming styling of the hair that uses piping hot cocoa on the scalp.
Not my hair.
And there you have it.
I did it.
A crafty concoction of colorful cocoa that is as satisfying as that first sip. Alright, well, if this cozy little art project warmed up your heart, you should come hang out with the Buzu crew over at patreon.com/BuzuCards, where the creativity's always brewing. Here, you can get exclusive access to art lessons, digital downloads, and even get the latest and greatest Buzu trading cards sent right to your doorstep every month. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. Keep stirring that imagination, and I will see you next time. Bye.
Want a magnificent way to keep learning about Beanjamin Brewster? Don't forget to whip up his character sheet. Link in the description below.